Hi, and welcome to Scientist Age Sangha. Thank you so much for joining us tonight to talk about empathy. I'm Nancy Anderson Dolan from Wise Heart Wellness, and I'll be telling you a little bit about what I've learned about empathy in my research and practice. And the quote that I love to start with is empathy is about finding echoes of another person in yourself. And that's such a wonderful description. It gets the feeling of the idea of empathy across. But beyond that, there's a lot more to it. If empathy is like the ability to literally feel what someone else is feeling, and both cognitively, like the understanding of what they're feeling, like, oh, they're feeling this, and that's what I see there now. And the affective side about actually feeling their emotions, like if they're distraught or if they're very happy. And that's one of the other things. When we think about empathy, we kind of think about sympathy as opposed to the empathy. We really can enjoy someone else's joy as well. If you've ever sat with a baby who starts to smile and look at you and chat to you, and it's this, oh, and we sort of get hooked in. And people that are just really peaceful, we can have that empathetic feeling for them as well. And we can feel, oh, that's so quiet and comfortable to be around that person. So it's not just distressing times, but those sort of go off more like a siren. So we pay more attention to them. But empathy is really being able to put ourselves in someone else's shoes, see the world through their eyes, feel what they're feeling. And then we sort of, we get a feeling that often we want to be helpful in some way. And that rolls out differently than sympathy. Sympathy is sort of understanding the situation is and feeling bad for them, not with them. That's a big difference. And sympathy means like, oh, you poor thing. So I'm going to play a clip from Brene Brown little cartoon about this that will make it a little more clear, I think. So I'm going to share my screen. Just a moment. Always when you think you have it all done, it's not. But here we go. Okay.
So what is empathy, and why is it very different than sympathy? Empathy fuels connection. Sympathy drives disconnection. Empathy, it's very interesting. Teresa Wiseman is a nursing scholar who studied professions, very diverse professions where empathy is relevant, and came up with 4 qualities of empathy. Perspective taking, the ability to take the perspective of another person or recognize their perspective as their truth. Staying out of judgment, not easy when you enjoy it as much as most of us do. Recognizing emotion in other people and then communicating that. Empathy is feeling with people. And to me, I always think of empathy as this kind of sacred space when someone's kind of in a deep hole and they shout out from the bottom and they say, I'm stuck, it's dark, I'm overwhelmed. And then we look and we say, hey, you climb down. I know what it's like down here, and you're not alone. Sympathy is, ooh, it's bad, no, you want a sandwich? Empathy is a choice, and it's a vulnerable choice, because in order to connect with you, I have to connect with something in myself that knows that feeling. Rarely, if ever, does an empathic response begin with at least. Yeah. And we do it all the time. Because you know what? Someone just shared something with us that's incredibly painful, and we're trying to silver lining it. I don't think that's a verb, but I'm using it as one. We're trying to put the silver lining around it. So, I had a miscarriage. Oh, at least you know you can get pregnant. I think my marriage is falling apart. At least you have a marriage. John's getting kicked out of school. At least Sarah is an A student. But one of the things we do sometimes in the face of very difficult conversations is we try to make things better. If I share something with you that's very difficult, I'd rather you say, I don't even know what to say right now. I'm just so glad you told me. Because the truth is, rarely can a response make something better. What makes something better is connection.
I'm going to shut that off too.
You're thinking about changing your career.
There we go. So this idea about this is so important to understand, because that urge for us to make people feel better is really an urge to make us feel better. I'm uncomfortable with you having that depth of pain, and I'm feeling that in my body. And so when we move into empathy, we can get overwhelmed sometimes. There's lots of people, I work with a lot of addicts, and a lot of addicts tend to be people that are over empathy. They get too much of it in their bodies. They feel what other people are feeling kind of indiscriminately, like raindrops falling on them and with no umbrella. And that kind of empathy is hard to deal with, and it can make us pull away from people instead of move towards them. And there's some ideas in the email that was sent out earlier this week, and it talked about some of the ways to work with empathy. And that's a really useful thing, because empathy, we don't want to just drown in other people's distress. And we don't want to be the person who is saying, well, oh, that's too bad. But, if you'd only done this, or I think you should do this about that. Those kinds of things are not helpful in the midst of a lot of pain. Often when people are nurtured through the first part of difficult things like that, they can make requests from you, like, could you go to the doctor with me? Or could you watch my kids while I do this? Those kinds of things are possible as they move past the deep distress part. But when we don't have that kind of interactive empathy, I would call it, it does fulfill a role in our life. So it is important. It strengthens our relationships, because then people know that we get them and we feel heard and seen and got. And that is such an important gift we can give to each other, that kind of connection with empathy. If I don't know how somebody else is feeling, I can't communicate that to them. I have a friend from another country, from South Sudan, and a lot of the time I don't know what she's feeling. And I'll think she's going to feel something. And as I observe her, I realize she's not feeling that. And that's so different. We have very different responses to things, but we can learn kinds of what we call empathy accuracy. And part of that is by actually asking questions about that without assuming, especially if you are really diverse, through different ages or cultures or situations, things like that. It can be really useful to say, oh, you look so sad. How are you doing? Or, are you feeling up to going out with us today? Those kinds of things about asking about their condition, not in the sense of, how are you doing? Because that is kind of difficult for most people. And if they've, got an illness, or if they've had a loss, just saying to them, I'm here for you if you want to connect. That's a beautiful gift we can give each other, because we may not feel the same way we think they feel, but we can learn to, as my son says, suss it out. And all that means is that we actually pay attention. We're suspicious that we know what they're feeling, but we're not entirely sure yet. And as we look at their body movements, look at their facial expressions, and even how they answer our questions, the energy they have, we can learn to have more empathy. This is not a fixed skill that some people have and other people don't. It really is a developed skill. And there's some reasons that people don't have empathy. And we can see that, like the lady on the video there who was offering sandwiches, didn't want to get too close to that. That didn't feel good to them. And there's lots of people that have that experience. And it's hard not to take that as rejection. But often it's just difficulty in feeling empathy, whether that's the overwhelm of actually feeling someone else's emotions, or if it's the actual misunderstanding of emotions. And so both things can cause problems. And if you're around someone who isn't able to be empathetic, the difficulty can be that they are trying, but they don't know this path. And that might be from, it can be from illnesses, it can be from brain chemistry issues, mental health, a particular culture. My friend from South Sudan is way more likely to just come out and say things because that's her culture. And nobody's embarrassed about it. It's just like, this is how it is. And in our culture, so where I'm from, North America, we're not quite as forthcoming. And so when I am with her and I have those moments where I'm sort of like, I adjust and I feel what she's feeling. And usually it's wide open and pleasant and, not pushy, very inviting. But if I don't slow down and pay attention to that, I could withdraw to some discomfort. So it's really useful. I encourage people to really choose to develop empathy with themselves. First of all, with themselves, that's correct, because lots of us don't know how we're feeling. Often in a number of cultures, but North American culture, my own, it's not really emphasized. It's not really valued or rewarded for you to know how you're feeling. And even going to a doctor, telling them the frustration people have had about a medication they've been trying, that kind of thing. I've had medical people say to clients, that's not how you're feeling. And it's so difficult because it shuts down communication. So we need to work on our empathy so we can both express ourselves and know others. Okay? So these ideas about that, I want to go a little further on to the causes of lack of empathy or too much empathy, because sometimes we have, it's natural to feel a disconnection and low empathy. There might be a difficulty empathizing with someone who has bullied you or mistreated someone you know. And there might be a lack of empathy because you hadn't learned it from anyone. And different things create those ideas and pathways, but we really, really can learn it. And some of the things that are suggested to learn empathy is really just some basic communication skills, but you use it with not just your brain, but your whole body. Your brain, your limbic center in your brain, your lower back, I call it the lizard brain. So you listen to those signals, the really primal ones. You listen to what your head is saying, but you also pay attention. So you're not doing something else while people are talking to you. You are really listening to them, not to have an answer that you know is good or fix their problem, but just to really hear them. And that's not easy to do. We're really wired to fix things and jump in and make people feel better. We can do that just by being empathetic and listening and paying attention to their body language. So if they're, starting to pull back from you, you may know that there's an issue there and that you're not connecting in a way that's comfortable for someone. And we can ask people about that, is talking about this making you uncomfortable? Or is there something I could do or say that would be more comfortable for you? And giving people that opportunity, because like I said, a lot of people in North America, they wouldn't be talking about really personal things just out on the cuff like that with most people. So watching the body language, learning what different people have responses to and how they tell you they're uncomfortable or they're happy. When people lean toward you and start to smile and they start to relax, you're on the mark and you're being healthy. You're that nurturing space for them. So paying attention to that. But one of the most difficult things, but perhaps most important, is being vulnerable. Because both to share with them someone else and to allow them into your feelings takes a lot of vulnerability. And that's kind of hard when we hold ourselves separate from people and don't really tell them how we're doing with things, or any of the difficulties we might be encountering, things like that. It's harder for other people to understand, but also they may not disclose to us things because they feel like we're not looking to interact in that way. So embracing our own vulnerability, again, allows other people to connect with us more deeply, and it allows us to let other people in more deeply. It requires letting go of some fear if you haven't done that a lot. And I encourage people to go in small steps and take the flyer and say, yeah, I had this difficult moment today with someone, and notice, with all the practice that you're doing, notice how they're feeling about that. How do they respond? And the last thing that I will talk about is about the idea of exploring new perspectives. Because if you were raised like I was in a community where everybody looked like me and talked like me and did things like me, understanding other people's lives is more difficult just because I don't have a set of references. And so as I've gone through my life, I literally looked to accumulate those references. Like with my friend from South Sudan, we exchange perspectives all the time because we have different views of the world. Oh, that's what you thought I meant. That's amazing. And then we find other things that we tell people easily or we don't, that we kind of hold them close, things like that. And we get to know each other's perspective of the whole world. So I really encourage you to do this idea of empathy. And for the people that are with me, we'll talk about this lots more as we get after the end of the video recording. And the people that are going to listen to this later, if you've seen this and you'd like to ask questions, you can always send questions to scientistsage@gmail.com with questions about any of these videos or things that you might like to discuss. So we're going to wind this down with a short meditation about opening up and having empathy. So get comfortable. You can put your feet up, take a breath. And truly, that first deep breath where your shoulders open up a bit and you relax a bit is a really useful way to signal empathy, both to other people and to our own bodies. Because we're not gearing up for something like this, we're like opening up for something. And often when I am talking to a client or a class, I will consciously relax into my chair, lean back a little bit, open up my body, because I really do want to take in all that's coming towards me. And just explore your own body first in your own mind. Maybe talking about empathy triggered something in you. I know for a long time I was exhausted by being around people and groups of people because I took in far too much of everyone's feelings and ideas, and it was just too much. I didn't have any way to moderate it. And as I learned to breathe and sort of clear my space, and literally just imagine clearing the energy out, opening up to the flow of energy for people. So it came to me, but I could ride it like a wave, not get drowned by it. It's a really lovely sort of picture of it. Even if somebody is angry or deeply sad, even small children, if they're crying desperately, it's easy to get into that. But if we can open up and relax, they can take in our state as well. Children are very empathetic. So we want to share with conscious intention both what we're taking in and what we're sending out. So that simple slowing of breath, regardless of what we're feeling, really happy, really sad, really angry, it just evens it out a bit and makes it palatable for us and other people. And we can imagine literally other people's energies coming to us and just moving past us. So we're not hanging on to anything. We're opening up to how they feel and just recognizing in ourselves what that might cause. It might cause my heart to feel heavy, or it might make me feel a little bit tired. I can just notice. Or I might be frustrated with a particular person or a particular type of person or a particular type of emotional experience, thinking, why don't they just get it together? And then I can notice that, wow, I'm not open. I'm not open to that empathy. And maybe I'm not in a place where I can open to that right now. And if I have enough empathy for myself, I can allow that idea. And I can let myself just have this gentle protection. I don't have to push away another or blame another for their experience. I can just feel it and set it down. I would say literally the highest quality of empathy is when you can open intentionally and consciously to someone and have a filter that takes you closed when you need to be. Being with them as much as you can be, and then coming back to yourself. In that way, we send out the messages that we will keep ourselves safe. They don't have to. And we will try and connect to them. We're not going to run away. We'll just practice and be steady for ourselves and for other people. And that's what I really wanted to communicate to people about empathy, how important it can be for ourselves and for other people. So thank you for joining us tonight. And for the people that are watching later, we'll close. Sorry. I am with you. You are with me. Blessed be. Thank you.